My name is Frank Miller. I'm 58 years old and have lived my entire life under the expansive sky of Denver, Colorado. For 30 years, my profession was architecture. I designed buildings, structures made of steel and glass that had to withstand time, wind, and the weight of the world. I understood foundations, how the stability of a large structure depends on each beam and screw. My life was like one of those buildings, solid, predictable. I had my wife, Sarah, the love of my life since high school, 2 grown children, and 3 grandchildren who were the light of our days. On Sundays, we went to church. And during the week, I worked, paid my bills, and worried about the things men my age worry about: retirement, health, the future of my grandchildren. I was never an overly political man. Sure, I voted, I had my opinions, but I wasn't the type to go to rallies or spend hours arguing online. I saw the growing anger in the country as background noise, a distant storm that I hoped would never reach my doorstep. I believed in the solidity of our nation, just as I believed in the solidity of the buildings I designed. But I was wrong. The foundation had long been cracked, and I simply wasn't paying attention. The day I died began like any other. It was a crisp autumn day, the Denver air cold and biting. I was finishing an inspection of a new downtown shopping complex. Around 3 p.m., my phone began vibrating nonstop. Messages from friends, news alerts flashed on the screen. The news was unbelievable, a punch in the gut for the nation. Charlie Kirk, a prominent political figure, had been murdered. Within minutes, the mood in the city shifted. The distant rumble of political division turned into a deafening thunderclap right above us. From my 10th floor window, I watched the streets fill. These weren't organized protesters. They were a mass of anger, fear, and confusion. Sirens wailed from every direction. I decided I needed to go home, to be with Sarah. I grabbed my coat, walked down to the street, thinking I could bypass the crowd. It was a fatal miscalculation. What had been a crowd became a mob, a living, mindless organism driven by panic and fury. I was swallowed up by it. The air grew thin, heavy with screams and the acrid smell of smoke. I was pushed, dragged by the human current. I tried to stay upright, but the pressure was immense. A man beside me fell, and the vacuum he left threw me off balance. I fell. The world became a blur of legs, boots, and faces contorted with hatred. The weight of dozens of people crushed me against the cold concrete. I felt my ribs crack like dry twigs. The pain was excruciating, a white explosion that consumed all my senses. I tried to breathe, but my lungs wouldn't obey. It was as if they were filled with cement. My last sight was the gray Denver sky, framed by a blur of anonymous, desperate faces. Then the pain was gone, the sound was gone, everything was gone, and in the darkness that followed, I died. The first thing I noticed was the silence. A deep, peaceful silence that contrasted sharply with the chaos of moments before. I was floating. I looked down and saw my own body, crushed and lifeless in the middle of the street. I saw the paramedics arriving, desperately trying to revive me, but I felt neither panic nor sadness. I felt a profound calm, a kind of detached curiosity, as if I were watching a film about someone else's life. I saw the scene, but I didn't feel its weight. The pain, the fear, the anger, everything had been washed away. Then a light began to shine at the edge of my vision. It wasn't a blinding light, but a soft, inviting glow, like the morning sun on a spring day. I was drawn to it, not by a force, but by a desire, a sense that this was my destiny. As I moved toward it, the light expanded, forming a tunnel around me. The walls of the tunnel weren't solid, but made of colors I'd never seen before, of sounds that felt like a symphony composed for my soul. Every note, every hue, seemed to know me, to welcome me. The feeling was of return. It was the sensation of a weary traveler who, after a long and arduous journey, finally arrives home. At the end of the tunnel, the light intensified, but it didn't hurt my eyes. It was a light that was also a feeling. And at the heart of that light, there was a presence. I can't describe it in human terms. It wasn't a man with a beard and a white robe, like in paintings. It was the source of all light, all sound, all love I had ever felt or could ever imagine, multiplied by infinity. Mo! It was a consciousness that knew me completely. Every thought I had ever had, every mistake I had made, every act of kindness I had ever performed. And instead of judgment, what emanated from that presence was an acceptance so absolute, a love so unconditional, that it dissolved every ounce of shame and regret I carried. I didn't need to ask who it was. I knew. I was in the presence of Jesus. And for the first time in my life or in my death, I felt completely at peace, completely safe, completely at home. In this space of pure love, I didn't need to speak. My thoughts were my voice, and the question burning in my soul was, what is happening to our world? What has happened to me? The presence answered not with words, but with a vision. Before me, the image of the United States formed, not like a map, but like a vast, intricate tapestry woven with threads of light. Each thread represented a connection between husband and wife, between parents and children, between neighbors, between communities. Some threads shone brightly with love and trust. Others were more tenuous, worn by time and neglect. It was a tapestry of stunning beauty, vibrant and alive. But then I began to see a darkness creeping in, like a thick, oily smoke rising from the ground. This smoke wasn't a color, but the absence of it. It was the smoke of discord, of distrust, of fear. Wherever this smoke touched the strands of light, they began to corrode, to become brittle and fragile. I saw the smoke gather around television screens, cell phones, computer keyboards. I saw families sitting at the dinner table looking not at each other but at their screens while the smoke swirled around them, whispering lies and fueling resentment. The golden threads between them began to snap. I saw churches where the wires broke between the pews, neighborhoods where an invisible but impenetrable line separated neighboring houses. The tapestry was unraveling, thread by thread. Then a voice, not a sound, but a knowledge planted directly in my consciousness, explained it to me. This is the civil war you fear, the presence said. It is not a war fought with weapons on battlefields, but a war for the heart, fought in every home, in every conversation, in every thought. It is not brother fighting brother over the color of their uniform, but over the color of their opinion. The darkness you see is not a political ideology. It is a spiritual entity. It is the spirit of division, and it feeds on your hatred. Every time you curse someone you disagree with, you feed it. Every time you share a story that fills you with anger, you strengthen it. You are destroying your own home, believing you are fighting for its good. My heart, or whatever my soul was, broke as I watched the beautiful tapestry turn into tattered rags. So there's no hope, I thought, and the vision shifted. The presence showed me small points of light, tiny but incredibly bright, beginning to appear amidst the dark smoke. I saw a woman on her knees in her room, praying not for a victory in a debate, but for the heart of the man she considered her political enemy. Her point of light shone brightly. I saw a young man, his finger hovering over the send button on an angry online comment, hesitate, delete the message, and close the app. Another point of light. I saw a man offer to help his neighbor fix a fence, even though he knew the neighbor had a sign for the opposing candidate in his yard. A third point of light. These points of light began to multiply. They were small, almost insignificant on their own, but as they appeared, they began to weave new threads, not of gold, but of sparkling diamond. These new threads were stronger, more resilient. They began to form a new network, a web of light that not only resisted the dark smoke, but repelled it, forcing it back. This is the only weapon that can win this war, the presence communicated. It is not a sword, but love. It is not indignation, but prayer. It is not shouting, but service. Darkness cannot be driven out by darkness. Only light can do that. Hatred cannot be driven out by hatred. Only love can do that. The depth and truth of that revelation filled me with a peace that transcended all understanding. I was immersed in love, in purpose, in truth, and I knew I never wanted to leave that place. Please, I begged, my entire being screaming with desire. Don't send me back. That world is too painful, too broken. I want to stay here with you. The pleading was the strongest emotion I had ever experienced. Leaving that place felt like a death, 1,000 times worse than the one I had just suffered. The presence's response was gentle but unyielding. Frank, it is because of the pain that you must return. It is because the world is broken that you must carry this message. Your mission is not finished. You will no longer build with steel and glass, but with hope and love. Go and tell them. Tell them how to stop the war. The presence explained to me that my task was simple but profound, to return and share the lesson. Return and be one of those small points of light. Before I could protest again, I felt an overwhelming force pulling me back, away from the light and love. The return was the opposite of a peaceful transition. It was like being thrown back into a body that was a cage of pain. It was an explosion of sensory agony. The heavenly silence was shattered by the sharp sound of a heart monitor. Peace was replaced by a searing pain in my chest. The warmth of divine love was exchanged for the sterile cold of a hospital room and the sensation of a tube in my throat. I opened my eyes to the glaring fluorescent lights of the ceiling, and the first thing I felt was a tear running down my face, a tear for the loss of that perfect home. I woke up in an intensive care unit. Sarah was beside me, her face a mix of exhaustion and relief. She told me I had been pronounced dead at the scene, that the paramedics had given up, but one of them, a young man, insisted on trying again on the way to the hospital. Days later, a doctor, a serious-looking man with gray hair, came into my room holding my medical records. He looked at me, then at the papers, and shook his head in disbelief. "Miller," he began, his voice low and filled with amazement, "I've been a doctor for over 30 years. I base my life on science and facts, but what happened to you? There's no medical explanation. You were clinically dead for at least 17 minutes. Your chest was crushed. Your lungs collapsed. Logically, and in all my experience, even if we had been able to restart your heart, the time without oxygen should have caused catastrophic and permanent brain damage. But your tests, your CT scans, are perfectly normal. You shouldn't be here, and you certainly shouldn't be lucid and talking. I'm not a man to use that word lightly, but your recovery is, from a medical standpoint, an impossible miracle." Those words weren't a surprise to me. They were confirmation. Prove to the world that my experience was real. I didn't come back from death by accident. I came back with a mission, and that mission is now my only reason for living. It's the message I was given in that sacred light, and it's the message I need to share with you now. America's coming war will not be won with louder arguments, with more anger, or with more division. It will only fuel the darkness. The solution is radically simple and incredibly difficult. It begins within each of us. The moral lesson, the only instruction I've been given, is this. The next time you feel that wave of anger towards someone you disagree with politically, the next time you feel the poison of hatred rise in your throat, stop. Take a deep breath, and instead of lashing out, say a silent prayer for that person. Ask for peace to find their heart. Ask for love to heal your own anger. Each time you choose prayer over anger, you light a point of light. You weave a new thread into the tapestry of the nation. This is how we fight. This is how we win, not by destroying our enemies, but by loving them until they are no longer our enemies. This is the only way to heal our home.